in all areas of your life? Would you be able to choose faster and easier? What futures would those choices create? Everyone is capable of connecting to their bodies in a way to have more exuberant and joyful living now and in the future. Now, here is your host of Choosing a Different Future with Siris.
Hi, everyone. I am Siris Raquel Rivas Verdejo on Choosing a Different Future with Siris. And today our show topic is Stop People Pleasing to Powerfully Navigate Toxic Relationships with our guest, Trina Sherman. And in case you're new to our show is all about how we can use communication and choice and our creativity to navigate and explore different possibilities beyond what has been projected or expected of us, so that we can create something amazing, something that lights us up, something that's beyond what we've ever considered or what anyone else has ever considered, perhaps. So in that vein, I've invited Trina to talk with us today. And I want to introduce you to Trina a little bit. I'm going to read a little bit of information about her. Trina Sherman believes that everyone has the power to create the life experience they want. As a certified professional coach, Trina coaches her clients into their power by reminding them of who they are, what they want, and teaching them the tools necessary for living an unbounded life. Unbounded from external influences and internal toxicity that lead to self-sabotaging behaviors. Trina has had experience in her own life overcoming challenges like a toxic relationship that ended in divorce, caring for an ailing parent through the end of life, and leading a company that was not in alignment with her truest desires. She knows how to dig in, keep her head down, and get things done, even when it has led to her losing sight of who she really is and being disconnected from her dreams. The good news is that she found her way out of that fog and has a blueprint to share with others on how to pivot into unbounded power. Trina now lives life on her own terms and walks in her calling of leading the way for women to unleash their power, live on purpose, and create positive change in the world. And her information can be found at www.unboundedwithtrina, spelled TRINI.com. And thank you so much, Trina Sherman, for joining us today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Now, I really, really am excited about this topic, but I want to also highlight that how we met. We met through NABO Charlotte. NABO is the National Association for Women Business Owners. They have chapters all over the United States, and we are in the Charlotte chapter together. And we got to meet at one of those networking events that they have. We've since seen each other multiple times. We're like, hey. And then one of the times we were like, would you like to be a guest on my podcast? We talked some more and it seemed like a good fit. And here we are. And I think that there's a lot of overlap between what we do and with relationships, but I'm curious, like, how did you even find yourself on the path to navigating people out of toxic relationships? I know that you had your personal experience with that. Was it your last relationship that led to divorce, or was it even before that?
Well, the most pivotal toxic relationship, there's patterns. We all develop patterns through life. And so my marriage of 28 years for me was seeds that had been sown, weeds that had been growing in the background of my life since childhood that came into full bloom in that marriage. And all of those things that were happening under the surface came into full bloom and were staring me in my face for me to be able to see what I was creating through my own patterns. And what changed for me was when I began to realize that I played a role in my current circumstances. Because as long as I was looking outside of myself at my husband, ex-husband, and at my circumstances, I felt powerless. But when I decided to say, this has something to do with me, and that gave me my power back, because if I was helping to create it, I could create something different. So that's when it changed for me to be able to create something different and learned how to do that, and was able to now get to a place where I can share that information with others.
I know, and I love that, because I think a lot of people, when they're looking at, oh, this is something to be, it has a different energy than what you just said. It's not, you're not saying this as in like blame and shame and like blaming yourself down, like, oh, this is my fault. You're not looking to find fault in someone. It's more like, oh, I'm actually the creator of my life, and this is something that I created and I got out of, and now I can create a path beyond this. This is really, really great. And also for our listeners, if you know of someone that needs to be reminded of how powerful they are, maybe someone who would like to create a life that reveals a more authentic, unapologetic, impactful version of themselves, share this episode with them right now. Like, take the next 15 seconds, share the episode with them, join us in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com/chat room. And it's anonymous. You can go in there, ask questions to Trina, make some comments, share your resources. We're going to share some resources today as well as we're talking about this. But this is one of those things that I think, even if you're not at a level where you think it's toxic, there's a lot of things that Trina is going to share with us today on how to identify even a healthy versus an unhealthy relationship, or how to improve wherever you're at in a relationship. So make sure you can share this information for anyone that you care about that needs this type of oomph in their life right now. Now, the other thing that resonated with me that I didn't realize that you had been married for 28 years. Were there kids involved as well in the marriage?
Absolutely. I have 3 beautiful adult daughters that are what I say is the best thing that's ever happened in my life. And so no matter the experiences I had, I wouldn't change a thing, because I'm happy with who I am today. And the path that I went through got me here. The beauty is I used it to learn, to grow, to become stronger and more powerful in the truth of who I am. And I've been able to share that with 3 other women, which are my children, and watch them. And so I've been able to be an example to them of how you can be in a situation, do the best you can, make the choices that you feel at that moment and at time were the best based on who you were and what you had available to you. And then when you decide that something's different, it's never too late. No matter if it's 28 years or it's 2 years or 50 years, whenever you choose that something's no longer working in your best interest, you can make some changes.
I love that. I love that. And I love this piece because there's so many episodes where we talk about families and children and how they're watching us, how they're looking to us as models for what relationships can be like, should be like. And it's really great that it wasn't too late, even after 28 years, for you to shift gears and be like, hey, this is something else that's possible for your own daughters. I have so many questions about that, but I'm going to wait on that because I want to get into so how does someone know if they're in a toxic relationship? Like, what are some of the signs that they can look for?
Right, absolutely. How I define toxicity is, if you imagine yourself, I love tea, so everything for me is about tea. So if you imagine yourself a beautiful teacup, and there's things that pour into your teacup, beautiful aroma tea that you love. I love herbal teas, and it's pouring into you. There's those things in your life that you know pour into you, they fill you up, they make you feel really great. And then imagine that there are things that drain that tea. There's things that drain your cup. That's what I call toxicity. Anything that is taking away from you. So if you're in a relationship that makes you doubt yourself, that you don't feel supported, that you cannot show up as yourself, that your self-esteem is being challenged. If you're a mother, for example, and you're not feeling that support in the raising of your children or the management of your home, for me, that can drain you. When you feel like being in that person's presence makes you feel less than you were before, or makes you feel worse than. Those are some signs and some symptoms, and that can be personal in your personal relationships, and it can also be in your professional relationships. It can be at work. I've worked with clients who have managers, co-workers who just walking into the office, I've had the personal experience of owning a business with my ex-husband, and it's like I could be feeling good. And then when I walked into the office of that building, I felt drained. And it's like something about this environment is taking away from the best of who I am. And that's what got me to a place to determine to leave a 28-year marriage, when I realized that I cannot be the best version of myself in the environment that I am in, because I've done all I can to make the changes. And now it's time for me to choose myself.
So I have two questions with that. This is really interesting. One, I know a lot of our listeners have mentioned either in the past or currently in some way that they don't really know who they are, that they're not really sure who they are anymore, maybe because of the circumstances and the uncertainty in the world, maybe because of external situations, like they're caring for, elderly loved ones, they are raising kids, and they are just kind of lost in the parenting world. And so how do you know if you're less of yourself if you're not really sure who you are anyway? Like, how does that work?
Right. And it shows up as stress. It can show us up as overwhelm. It could show up as, for me, it's changed weight gain. For me was some signs, impatience, easily triggered, or emotionally, just something that could resonate at a level 2, I was responding at a level 10. It's like, why is this getting to me the way that it is? It's because of the environment that I'm in is creating a level of sensitivity and emotional. I wasn't at a place of emotional mastery or mental focus, getting to a place that things that I used to do, that I could think really clearly, focus mentally, problem solve, my memory, all of those things were signs that something's off here. And I didn't attribute it to the environment that I was in. I attributed it into there was something going on that was wrong with me, that, I just needed to work out, or why can't I lose the weight, or why can't I sleep at night? Those were all things that were coming into my life. And it wasn't just my marriage, it was the toxicity from the business and taking care of an ailing parent. All those things made my environment very challenging for me to show up as the best version of myself.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's the contrast of, let's say you leave, you feel some relief, you're feeling better, you've had a tea chat with the friend, and then you go and you're interacting with your partner or your friend that's toxic, or you go to your work and all of a sudden you're feeling that reactivity again, or that stress, that overwhelm, that, oh, maybe I shouldn't say this, and you're walking on eggshells, then that might be a sign that, oh, but that particular situation, that environment or person, there might be some questions to ask around toxicity. Is that what, am I hearing you correctly?
Exactly. A perfect example is I was working with a client, and they had this opportunity to go away on a retreat and got into a great space and wonderful experience, and uplifted and excited about what's next. And then coming down from that mountain experience back into home was a clear stress started, discomfort came, and even physical response.
Yeah.
It's from stomach issues that showed the difference of, there's something in this environment that I'm not looking forward to re-entering, was a sign that there's something to look into.
I can relate to that. With my first ex-fiance, I was in my 20s, and we'd been having a really rough, like 9 months of disconnect, of him really, rejecting my advances, like sexual advances, like he wasn't really talking to me. He was really depressed. He wasn't working, all these different things. He wasn't taking care of his body and his health. And then he went to visit his mom. And I got the first, talk about sleep, the really good night's sleep. And I woke up and I was like, oh no, I don't want him to come back. And that was the big aha. And I was like, okay. And then I called him, and we had this conversation, and I broke it off, and he came back to try to fight for us. And I was like, I put all of my eggs in there. I already did all the things in the last 9 months. Like, there's nothing for me to fight for anymore. This is my own personal journey. But and then we broke up, and he moved back to New Jersey. But that was, I get what you mean by that contrast of, like, sometimes you're in the thick of it with all these other things, and then you get your head out of water, and you can take that big relieving breath and you're like, oh wow, I want to breathe like this more often.
Exactly. And even sometimes there's that inner voice, that thing inside of you that's just saying, there's more. There's more I want to do. There's more I want to accomplish. In that voice, we get to a place that we start ignoring that internal voice that's saying, this is not okay. But because we're comfortable or because we fear what can be on the other side of the decision, we continue to try and make it work. We try and make it fix it until we get to a point. And that's where the people pleasing came in for my life, because it was about, what impact is this going to have on my children if I make this decision? It wasn't that I didn't know the decision. It wasn't that I didn't know what to do. It's making the choice.
Well, let's talk more about that. It's time for our first break of this show. When we return, we're going to continue to discuss some of the signs of what a toxic relationship can look like. And you're listening to Choosing a Different Future with Siris on the Inspired Choices Network. And we'll continue to talk about stop people pleasing and powerfully navigate toxic relationships with my guest, Trina Sherman, when we're back. We'll be right back.
Most people haven't been taught how to listen and partner with their bodies in order to create lives that include clarity, pleasure, ease, and connection. Tuning in to Choosing a Different Future with Siris, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and resources on how to use your awareness of bodies and energy to your advantage. Siris is a family and child coach and therapeutic energy worker who will guide you to get clear and acknowledge what's brilliant, magical, and a gift about you.
Are you a subject matter expert? Are you here to share your expertise with an audience waiting to hear from you in only the way you can deliver? Are you ready to have your voice amplified across the airwaves? Inspired Choices Network has a global radio platform streaming to millions of people across the world. Professionally produced and supported by an accomplished team every step of the way, you can broadcast from anywhere in the world, knowing your voice matters, and we ensure it is delivered with ease and efficiency. Eager to hear your message, the world awaits. Contact us today to become an Inspired Choices Network radio host. Email become a host at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com.
This is the Choosing a Different Future show with Siris. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. Connect with Siris through her website, empoweringlightlanguage.com, or send an email to empoweringlightlanguage@gmail.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Siris Raquel Rivas Verdejo on Choosing a Different Future with Siris. And today our show topic is Stop People Pleasing and Powerfully Navigate Toxic Relationships with my guest, Trina Sherman. And our show is brought to you by Protandim Tri-Synergizer. Take advantage of the important contribution from every Protandim supplement. You get comprehensive benefits, including support for healthy aging, optimal cellular energy, improved mental focus, and healthy longevity. It's a level of benefits you can only get from teamwork. The Protandim family of products works by activating your body's pathways to enhance its own functions, and the result of this triple-tier approach is our most powerful solution. And you can find out information about this product and all of the other plant and natural products of LifeVantage by going to our episodes page or to sirisrivas.lifevantage.com. And before we went on break, we were talking about some of the signs of a toxic relationship on both of our ends. And I'm curious, Trina, if there was a moment, if there was that like aha moment that I described with my ex-fiance before break that you had, where you were like, okay, it's time to get a lawyer, it's time to have a conversation with my husband. Like, what was that for you?
So my mother who was ailing and living in our home, we got to a place where that required 24-hour care. And I was running a company at the time. And so I was really, really getting to places of such exhaustion, mental, emotional exhaustion. And so there was one night that I was in her room and I was just sitting in the chair. And all of a sudden I started feeling lightheaded. And mind you, my mother was suffering from congestive heart failure. My father had heart attacks and strokes. Both of my grandmothers had cardiovascular disease of some form. And so I was sitting in the chair and I started getting lightheaded. So I looked on my watch and looked at my heart rate. And my heart rate had gotten up to 123, and I was just sitting. I wasn't doing anything.
Mm.
And that struck me like, okay, wait a minute. You've been getting the signs. There have been little quiet signs coming along, and then it's getting louder and louder and louder. And now here you are, weeks away from, I didn't know at the time, but knew it was close, from my mother passing. And now I'm starting to have some heart rate issues. So that struck me. And then I sat there and I thought about the fact of there's something about watching someone transition out of this life that was really transformational for me. And so as I watched that, it's like, okay, intellectually, I know that will be my path at some point, that I will leave this earth. But it hit me in a different way at that moment that I thought, no, this is really going to happen to you. And when you get to the end and you look back at how you have lived your life, are you going to be satisfied?
Mm.
And the answer was a resounding no, because I knew inside there was so much more that I wanted to contribute to the world that I didn't have the capacity emotionally, physically, or mentally to take on. And so in that moment, I decided either choose to continue this path and get to the end of your life and be able to live regret, which is something I do not like having, is regret and having no more time left to do anything about it, or you can do something about it now. And that's what happened for me. I said, something has to change. My mother passed in November of 2018. And by the end of January, it was very clear to me that it is time for me to make this change. And I made up my mind, and it was scary. I won't say it was easy. It was scary. But I got to a place where choosing me became more important than the fears that I had.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't realize how much we had in common. Like, I sensed it, but like, yes, tea. I'm a tea fiend. I've talked a lot about it on the show. Like, I have cabinets and drawers full of tea. So we're going to have some tea together the next time we see each other. But the other thing is this caring for somebody 24/7. I did the same for my maternal grandmother with my mom. We would share tasks back and forth. We are fortunately, you've met my mom. We are fortunate that we work from home, that we work from wherever, and we could share those tasks and be available to her until it got to be where even us sharing those different caregiving tasks was too much. And we had a nurse come in and all of that. And we were both present when my grandmother transitioned in Puerto Rico. And you're right, it is impactful. It is very powerful, and it affects you in sometimes unexplainable ways. And you articulated that so beautifully, probably better than I could have explained how it felt for me when I saw her transition. And I'm still grieving that what happened with her. That was June of last year. And so what a gift in that ending. And also there was a beginning for you. Now, how does someone start to take the steps to those first step, and then the next first step, and the next first step, actually, in powerfully navigating out of a toxic relationship, no matter what type it is? Like, what would be one of the first things that they would need to do?
One of the first things is what I call spill the tea. Tea
Oh,
again.
no.
Spill the tea. Let's look in the teacup. Let's see what's going on. Let's tell the truth. Be willing to become aware of what's in the tea. There's some particles down in that teacup that don't belong.
Yeah.
Are there some things that you don't want in your tea that could create some issues for you? And that is so important, to be willing to take a peek, because sometimes we rather not look than really be honest with ourselves and others. And that's another place that is to be the shame factor of being in that and feeling the shame of, I'm in this and I don't know what to do about it, especially for high achieving people who feel that they should not, some of those things come up. I shouldn't be here. I should know better. And then the shame comes in, and then you don't share your story with anyone else. So I try and create community and environment and opportunities for women, especially, to come together and be able to spill the tea and feel the environment that it's okay. Like you're saying, we're talking now, you're like, wow, we have more in common. But when you're in the trenches, sometimes you can come to think that you're alone and you're the only one, until you start spilling that tea and talking and open yourself up to find out that there are many more people out there who can be of support to you on your journey. So I start my clients out with, let's spill the tea. Let's talk about what's going on there. And sometimes they may not, to even get to a place to even asking or looking for support, you can do it on your own. And that's where I started, was looking inside myself.
Yeah. And everybody's approach, maybe their time availability, maybe their resources are a little bit different. I think that they might want to powerfully navigate this situation differently. And yet this piece that I'm getting from what you're saying is it takes a lot of courage, even if it's one-on-one with somebody versus a group support or a community support. Like, it's still to take that first step to even just look and take inventory or take stock can be a lot. And yet it's so important, because we don't want to live with regret. We don't want to like worry that we're not actually being who we are, and that we have these models like your daughters that are looking to us, these little people, and now they're big people looking at us and as examples. How has your choices impacted them? Have they mentioned anything?
Yeah, actually, one of my daughters, very much has had some experiences herself with, without putting, too much out there, because it's not my story, but she has made decisions based on my decisions that helped her to see that you can make different choices. And she has verbalized to me very openly that if I hadn't presented that example before her, that she may have made different choices in an experience that she was having. And so, yes, that, and I have another daughter. We have very open conversations and talk and have candid conversations. So their mindsets are open and available to look. It doesn't mean they're absolved of ever running into toxicity or having toxic relationships. There's no judgment around it, but there is the benefit of knowing that I have the power to transition out of. And then there is something also about being able to, once you do your inner work and you get to understand your power, it isn't always that you have to leave. Sometimes when you step into your power, you change the environment and you make it different. So I'm not a proponent, because the path for me led me to divorce. And I know you've given an example for you, it led you to leave a relationship. But I also have had experiences where knowing who I was, showing up in my power, created an environment that it lifted someone else up from their behavior, that they were able to look inside themselves and challenge the things in them that were creating toxicity as well.
Would you mind sharing that example, like an example of when someone identified, okay, this isn't really working and I need to step into my power, and it didn't lead to a breakup?
Absolutely. Being in a situation where I coached a client where she's remained in her marriage, but she began to speak up. She began to ask for what she wanted, and she began to make clear what her boundaries were. And when she stood firm without feeling victimized in asking for the boundaries, but standing firm on the boundaries, they began to be respected, because people can tell when you mean what you say versus when you're asking permission for your boundaries to be. I'm so sorry, there's a number alert for me.
No worries. It makes me think of actually a client of mine as well, that she came to me specifically because she was worried that she was on the brink of divorce. And we worked on her communication, because she felt like she was being told that she wasn't actually communicating in a kind way. So she was really like, I'd like to be kinder in my communication, but I also would like to get these other needs met. And how do I balance both of our needs and talk through this? There were concerns around finances. There were concerns about co-parenting, all these different things. And it wasn't, and I always present it, it's like, I can't promise you'll stay together. And I'm not saying that you're going to get broken up or get divorced either. It's about honoring what everybody needs and making sure that you're better together moving forward, either together or apart moving forward. And a lot of that is that communication piece. I often talk about how, okay, maybe you are dancing like a salsa together and we're going to change the steps. And maybe it'll become a merengue, maybe it'll become a tango, maybe it'll become hip hop. I'm not sure, but like, if you'd like to dance together, we got to find a different type of dance steps. And so sometimes when someone else takes a step to the right instead of a step back, like they usually would have, then they're like, the other person has to, if they still want to dance with you and be in a relationship with you, they need to follow that lead or do something else. Otherwise, you might both fall over. And so these little things, step by step by step, can change the dance of a relationship. So curious, like, when has there been when people worked, actually, you know what? I think we should take a break. Let's take a break really quick, because this is next thing that I want to ask you is going to take a lot longer than we probably have. So it's time for our next break, y'all. You're listening to Choosing a Different Future with Siris on the Inspired Choices Network. And when we return, we will continue to discuss stop people pleasing and powerfully navigate toxic relationships with my guest, Trina Sherman. We'll be right back.
Most people haven't been taught how to listen and partner with their bodies in order to create lives that include clarity, pleasure, ease, and connection. Tuning in to Choosing a Different Future with Siris, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and resources on how to use your awareness of bodies and energy to your advantage. Siris is a family and child coach and therapeutic energy worker who will guide you to get clear and acknowledge what's brilliant, magical, and a gift about you.
How wonderful would it be to carry your favorite Inspired Choices Network host with you throughout your day? Well, now you can. Inspired Choices Network now has its very own mobile app. Our free app offers live streaming shows, along with thousands of podcasts and TV episodes. Our shows cover a wide variety of topics. Whether you're waking up with us, carrying us through the day, and taking us to bed with you, we're always here for you to enjoy. We're easy to find. Just search for Inspired Choices Network in the Apple App Store or Google Play Store.
This is the Choosing a Different Future show with Siris. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. Connect with Siris through her website, empoweringlightlanguage.com, or send an email to empoweringlightlanguage@gmail.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Siris Raquel Rivas Verdejo on Choosing a Different Future with Siris. And today our show topic is Stop People Pleasing and Powerfully Navigate Toxic Relationships with my guest, Trina Sherman. And our show is brought to you by Protanden's Tri-Synergizer. Take advantage of the important contribution from every Protandim supplement. You get comprehensive benefits, including support for healthy aging, optimal cellular energy, improved mental focus, and healthy longevity. And you can find information for that product on our episodes page, or go to sirisrivas.lifevantage.com. And please join us in Chicago. We're going to be in Chicago next weekend. Gosh, this is so crazy. Saturday, November 4th, we will be having our awakening class with the theme of coming home to you. And this is where you learn to give and receive the living and dying body process. That class is going to be in person in Chicago, or you can live stream it right to your home wherever you are in the world. The information for it is at empoweringlightlanguage.com/living and dying. You can also join our Expansive Energies self-care group by going to empoweringlightlanguage.com/expansive energies. And Trina, do you have any upcoming events or information that you would like people to know that's going on with your business?
Absolutely. Actually, next week, I'm going to be going live offering 5 days of power.
Ooh.
In that, it's really going to take you through the 5 steps or ingredients that how I define power. So it will be going live on Facebook next week, and I'll be advertising that on my Facebook page.
Awesome. So find Trina on Facebook, y'all. I will be checking that out. That's so cool. I think that a lot of people have a lot of misconceptions about power and what it is. A lot of people think that it's about power, like taking power away from somebody else. And I suspect, given our conversation today, that is not the case. And so I am really excited to join you on that. I will be there. I'm going to put it in my calendar. Thanks so much. And before we went on break, we were starting to talk about some of our experiences and some of the ways that people can know both the subtle and the more explicit signs of being in a toxic relationship. In addition to, we started talking about how are some of the ways that we can start taking those initial first steps that to put our good girl pants, or not good girl, that's a different topic, a big girl pants or big boy pants on to get out of toxic relationships. And in your experience, I know that you work more with women than with men. Are there any signs of how that can show up that's a little bit different for men that are in toxic relationships than women?
You know, in my experience, I haven't seen much difference. It's just more in terms of the willingness and the openness to see it. It has been my experience with some of my clients of coming more from that masculine energy, logical thinking, coming into a relationship with them, working more from business perspective. And as we work over time, it comes out that they're having some of the same difficulties in their environment around feeling comfortable walking in their truth, speaking their truth, and not feeling like, especially work with people around stepping into your calling or your purpose and what is your meaning. And so I find that the men I've worked with tend to look at that more from a logical perspective, but when we dig under it, it's still the same impact on their emotions and their mental health. And
Could you give me an example of that? Like how, like, I know that it's similar in a lot of ways, but the analytical or maybe the more masculine considerations there, like of somebody that you worked with or somebody that you know that had to navigate out of a toxic relationship?
yeah, well, being logical from the perspective of just thinking about, from our culture, a lot of times it's our culture and our societal norms that define our thought processes and belief systems. So from a man's perspective, it's more of you have to be strong in a certain way. You're to be the provider. You need to, make things work and stay tough and not show emotion, and to do this work to deal and get under the surface of a toxic relationship and toxicity. It takes some vulnerability to share that story and to be able to dig into that. But through the work, especially when you get a trained professional to work with you that has the skills and the tools and the path to share with you, that has been the key, especially with women and with men, but specifically right now, since we're talking about men, to be able to have the skill set to be able to meet them where they are and help them to be able to navigate to a place that they're willing to spill the tea, let's say, but not start there necessarily with them. It may be more of, what are you thinking? What are your thought processes? What are the important things to you? And then when you find out what their goals and their passions and their vision is, then you can begin to dig under the surface. And so that's where I found the approach from a trained professional. The approach may be different, and it's different with individuals anyway, but for men and women, there is a different approach that comes with skill from being trained.
Yeah. And with both, you mentioned business and how there's a lot of times there are people who are very successful, they're professionals, they're business owners that you've worked with this. They're coming from that perspective and in the analysis or in looking at maybe a cost benefit ratio or things like that, and they apply that to their relationships. If you are in a toxic professional setting, what are some things that you can consider and start taking those first steps to prepare to get out of it if you can't, let's say, afford to leave that job right away? With a relationship, there may be a different timeline and considerations where you can't immediately leave. Maybe there's kids, maybe there's household or financial entanglements as well. And so with business, especially right now, with a lot of people having a hard time finding a job, some of them are tight-fisting the jobs that they have, even if they're not necessarily as respectful, as kind, as nurturing, as gratifying as they could be. So how can people right now take some of those steps to plan for a different future if they're in a toxic work environment?
And here's the thing that's, I'm glad you asked that question, because where I really focus on with my clients are not to focus as much on what's the external. So if it's in a professional environment and it's not to focus as much on that person's behavior, but on how their behavior is impacting you and what are the things in you that make you more vulnerable to that type of behavior, that makes it more triggering for you. So we dig into why is that. So it could be, since part of our topic today is about people pleasing, if you have had the pattern in the understanding that it's important for you to keep everyone happy and keep everyone satisfied, then you don't feel that you have the right to stand up for yourself, that you don't feel that you have the position or the opportunity to really spend time saying, hey, this is what I need in this environment, and how do I find a way? And that would be the first step, is to get to an understanding that you deserve to be in an environment that is more positive, and understanding, excuse me, that you have the power within you to do the work inside, to say, I know that I'm going in there tomorrow. I know this is how, let me start doing some visioning. Let me start dealing with of how I want to show up in that space, so that I'm not caught off guard by it, but that I'm preparing myself, that I'm doing some quiet time in the morning to do meditation and filling myself with the things that strengthen me and empower me while I'm still in the midst of this. Because absolutely, you can't just snap your fingers and leave every situation, but how can I grow now in the midst of it, and go inside and say, what are those things that fill my cup? Start putting more in that fill, so you're filling more than the draining out, is some type of symbolism. And for me, and what I share with my clients, we do journaling, we do get in there and understand what I call your saboteurs, those patterns that you've had all your life that are sabotaging, that are what we call self-sabotage, lead you down that path. And when you begin to deal with those things, those external forces have less impact and leverage over your life experience. But it is when we don't think we get to change the inside. So you're not going to always change the person and be able to lead, but you can change your experience of that. And I've seen it firsthand in my life and in others.
I love that. I love that. And it sounds like you're actually inviting people to create those opportunities where they are going to be respected, where they can start changing those steps to the dance, doing better self-care and looking at their self-care systems. And we've talked a lot about that. We actually did in last week's episode was about self-care and communication skills for joyful breakups, breakups of all kind, not necessarily from a toxic relationship. And it's really important when we're navigating all these different ups and downs and changes in our lives, different transitions from grieving to different environments and work. And I'm curious too, when it comes to like a work environment where someone's gunning for you over and over and over again, or actually even a relationship, in a romantic relationship with somebody that's just coming after you over and over and over again. Do you point them ever to like resources like calling HR or getting other people involved, like going to a domestic violence shelter or things like that, where it's like, let's get you removed or get some other people that are going to have your back while you're navigating this situation?
Absolutely. And honestly, I have not had any personal experience around domestic violence, so I really can't speak to that. That's not an area that I'm professionally trained in. So but if I were to encounter a client that was experiencing that, absolutely, it's important for you to get protection and take care of your physical well-being most of all, then never tolerate physical abuse and where you feel that you're actually in some real extreme danger. Absolutely, that is a place that you step in, you take immediate action to get that level of protection. In a professional environment, like you said, when gunning after you, that then comes from that place where we start with, this is unacceptable, and being clear that it's unacceptable. Now, what are the resources that are available to me that I can avail myself to address that? If it means going to HR, if it means going to someone above the person, then those are the things that you're willing to take. Understanding that sometimes people don't take those steps because they're afraid of the risk involved. And there's always risk involved. There's a price to pay with whichever decision you make. There's a price to pay to do nothing, and there's a price to pay to do something. You get to decide which price you're willing to pay, or which it's choice. It is personal choice. So you get to, in that professional environment, to say, I choose. Now that I'm making a conscious choice. Sometimes we make it out of fear, but if we do an analysis and we figure out, you know what, this is unacceptable based on these particular factors. Right now, I think the best decision for me is to say nothing or to say this or that, but you're making a conscious choice rather than acting from default and from fear. And then you can say, you know what, I'm going to make the choice that yes, there's a risk involved. And in fact, I just had this conversation with my daughter in a professional environment where she says, you know, I come from a family where we speak and we advocate and we stand up, because my family was very involved in the civil rights movement here in this country. And so that's in our DNA. And I reminded them, I said, that's who you are. That's your people. That's in your genes to do that. And someone else said to her, yeah, but this is a corporate environment. That's just part of what you need to take in. That's what you do. And she said, no, that's not who I am. And she made the choice to take the risk that there might be some ramifications, but it's more important for her to be true to herself than to shrink back from an opportunity to be an advocate.
I love that. I love that she knew so clearly who she was, even in the face of people saying that type of rhetoric that we've all heard in so many different situations, and definitely in professional settings. The teachers that I work with, like I was just having a conversation like that with a colleague just yesterday around people pleasing and everything, and just being willing to say no. And you don't have to say no with the words "no," but there's a lot of different ways of doing that. So thank you for that example. It's time for our next break. And when we return, we're going to continue to discuss stop people pleasing and powerfully navigate toxic relationships with my guest, Trina Sherman. You're listening to Choosing a Different Future with Siris on the Inspired Choices Network. We'll be right back.
Most people haven't been taught how to listen and partner with their bodies in order to create lives that include clarity, pleasure, ease, and connection. Tuning in to Choosing a Different Future with Siris, you'll receive tools, inspiration, and resources on how to use your awareness of bodies and energy to your advantage. Siris is a family and child coach and therapeutic energy worker who will guide you to get clear and acknowledge what's brilliant, magical, and a gift about you. This is the Choosing a Different Future show with Siris. To participate in the program, join the live studio audience in our chat room at inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. Connect with Siris through her website, empoweringlightlanguage.com, or send an email to empoweringlightlanguage@gmail.com. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Siris Raquel Rivas Verdejo on Choosing a Different Future with Siris. And today our show topic is stop people pleasing and powerfully navigate toxic relationships with my guest, Trina Sherman. And before we went on break, we've been on a journey, actually. We really have talked about so many different things. If you didn't catch it from the beginning, y'all, go to the beginning as soon as this episode's available, which is basically in 15 minutes on podcast platforms. And if you're listening live, thank you for joining us on all this. And then go to the beginning. All right, listen to this again. I'm going to have to listen to this again. There are so many gems in this conversation. I'm so grateful for all that we've discussed so far. I'm curious, Trina, what future would you like to see more of in the world when it comes to how people navigate and create relationships?
Good question. What I would love to see, like on a broad scale, when we look around the world and all that is going on, it all comes down to relationships. It all comes down to how we relate to one another as people, how we treat one another, how we value one another. And my heart's desire, the reason I love the work that I do, is to create an environment where there's equity and justice for all people, and that we have peace. I can remember just being in the throes of the deepest, darkest parts of my path and just saying, I just want peace. Just the simplicity of peace. And it sounds very simple, and then it sounds very complicated in some situations. But it's about peace, and I would love for people to learn how to go inside themselves and create their own peace within themselves, and then share that peace with the world, one person at a time, and then see the ripple effect, because it doesn't take a lot. But when we do, I was just at a retreat, and we were in the pool, and I just noticed I did a little movement, and just watching the water move. And that was a visual for me about how the ripple effect can come from just us doing this today. What is the ripple effect that can happen here? What's the ripple effect that people can have in their jobs, in their work environment, in their homes, in their children, just by creating more peace in their own internal being?
I love that. I would love that to see that in the world as well. So more of that, please. It's my energetic ask. And you can connect with Trina by going to Unbounded with Trina, spelled TRINI.com. And Trina, what's your email address as well if people want to email you?
Yes, it's Trina at unboundedwithtrina.com. TRINI at unboundedwithtrina.com.
Excellent, excellent. And also make sure to check out her for 5 days of power on Facebook Live next week. That's going to be awesome. And I'm hopefully, if you're catching this as a replay later on, she'll be doing some other events, and just make sure to follow her on Facebook so you can know and be notified about that. And then next week, please join us on our last live show of this year. It's going to be on honoring those who have passed. 2023, we did a show on this. This is actually the sequel to the show that we did last year. And I'm inviting everyone to join us so we can honor the lives that have touched ours. We've earnestly, gratefully, and tenderly ask as a show that you send us the names and messages for your loved ones who have passed in 2023 or any other time. And let's celebrate the legacies, fostering connections beyond time and space. Life's challenges from illness to loss often leave us feeling disconnected, but have our loved ones truly left us? Together, let's explore this question and transform these moments into catalysts for a renewed zest for life. And so you can send in something as simple as the person's name and I love you, or this person is survived by so-and-so, or this person passed on this year and I'm still thinking of them. They're in our thoughts. And we're going to be playing with the living and dying body process during this episode as well. And this show will be dedicated to those who have passed, and also to those of us who would like to dissolve any sorrow, any confusion by sharing stories, so that we can pave a way to a future that's brimming with more ease and awaken to a life filled with exuberant living. And I was so impressed and so verklempt last year when we did this. I'd love to include your mom and anyone else that you'd like us to have as a part of this, include their energies in this, Trina, if you'd like. We basically say the people's names, say whoever else we would like to mention on the show. And some people talked about the ways that they like to honor those who have passed, from baking to artwork to dancing certain songs. So we're going to go through all these different possible ways and more, and just remind ourselves that there is no timeline for this type of stuff. And that we're also not alone as we're grieving, and also choosing to continue to live on this beautiful planet. So if you'd like to honor someone that has passed whenever they have, please go ahead and message us at empoweringlightlanguage@gmail.com or on any of our platforms. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you, Trina.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
listening to the Choosing a Different Future show. Siris returns Fridays at 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Mountain, and 7 a.m. Pacific on InspiredChoicesNetwork.com. Until then,